Hey, what's up, mortals? It's Miggy Sawdust here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 3 of Season 1 of What If Deku Had a Luck Quirk. Just wanted to greet you all by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. Let's get started. Kurogiri could hear the sound of harsh metal resonating within his intangible ears. It was almost as if his physical and mental being had separated, one going with time while the other was stuck in place. Thoughts racing at 1,000,000 miles per hour, but body moving in slow motion. It was like a bolt of lightning crashing down from the clear blue sky, an irregularity among the common. A water pipe had dislodged itself from the broken water system when the villains infiltrated in, twisting in a way that it fell onto Kurogiri's hidden neck brace. The force had rattled the man's core, pulling him to the ground and creating an opportunity that Ida didn't miss. The class rep ran full speed to the door, and within seconds, escaped the USJ. I have made a mistake. Like a pot of water beginning to boil, the feeling of nausea swelled up within the pits of the villain's stomach as he tried to force his body up. His vision doubled and swayed like a drunk man, while his body slowly heated up. The bubbles within threatened to hurl and blood trickled down the intangible face. Despite the pain, Kurogiri knew he had to report back to his young master, but something was stopping him. He just couldn't get up. The internal ringing sound still pierced through his ears like a kettle ready to pour, and mild annoyance gnawed at his conscience. Calm down. I must report back to. The train of thought came to a sudden stop as a heavy mass made itself present. It wasn't there a moment ago. Alarmed golden eyes widened as they tried to turn around, and through the spinning lens of his dizzying world, Kurogiri could just make out the body of a student. Izuku? Uraraka, who had been by 13's side, sat wide-eyed in shock at the sight of her classmate, like a cheetah in the savannas hidden in plain sight. The silent student had jumped his prey, tightening his grip around the thrashing man, before glaring into the villain's eyes. A hair-raising chill ran up Kurogiri's spine as he entered the Greenette's personal space, and instinctively, the intruder knew to stay still. Even if his mind had finally slowed down and adjusted to the present, he was not in control of the situation. Shoji confirmed to the others that every one of the students had been distributed across the facility, and none were accounted missing, apart from Ida, who they watched escape. At the same time, Sero helped bind the villain with Sato's help, getting the mist quickly restrained as Mina went to check on the brunette nearby. She had been as silent as a mouse the whole time, with an expression no one could figure out, and the pink alien wanted answers. Are you okay? The concern in her voice snapped Uraraka into reality, and her bob of hair nodded in response. Ochaka's classmate clearly didn't believe the lie, and she sighed slowly before looking over at the others. Well, if I'm being honest, I guess I'm just a little jealous of Izuku. Mina's face lit up as she nodded in agreement, suddenly talking about how the physical test had just ended. It's just a bit frustrating not to see him try as hard as the rest of us. Their conversation caught the ears of the bringer of silence, and irritation pulled within the depths of the student. Didn't Bakugo say something about that? I could at least talk to Bakugo. Talking to Izuku was like, well, it's like talking to a wall. Izuku just couldn't comprehend what they were talking about. Years of hiding his emotions had caused his face to not break character, but the words were hitting in ways that he hadn't experienced. It felt like a parasite gnawing at his very being, and he couldn't get out. Isn't it unfair how he doesn't have to try hard at all? Quirks are different for everyone, but having luck is just a cheat. I wish I could take it easy. I want to help my parents in every way I can and not have to worry about them. It hurt. It hurt a lot. He wanted the words to stop. Physical pain was something his quirk prevented, but nothing could stop the emotional damage. Why couldn't they just be quiet? He did it all the time. They didn't know what he was going through, yet they spoke as if they did. I wish I had a luck quirk. The world fell silent. The deafening lack of noise felt sinister and heavy in the lungs of everyone present, as Viridian eyes glared at his two classmates. The uncanny expression was almost unnatural, and the girls could hear their own frightened heartbeats slamming against their rib cages. It was said that the eyes are the windows to the soul, but for them, they saw nothing. The pair of empty eyes bore into their very existences, leaving them painfully vulnerable and on edge. There was something spine-chilling about the maintained eye contact, and as every second passed, returning the hostile look only broke something within them. They were scared. They wanted it to stop. They wanted it to end. You don't. A quirk like mine is not wanted. The transient cold spell passed as Izuku spoke, voice timid as if he walked on broken glass. The walls between himself and the class only seemed to thicken, but just for a second. Uraraka thought she had caught a glimpse of a vulnerable boy. The image disappeared as quickly as it appeared, when suddenly, Kurogiri moved. The villain tried to take advantage of the situation to escape, but luck was not on his side. The broken water system groaned and bent under the pressure of blocked water, and just when he managed to open his portals, the pipes burst and emptied their contents down. Concern shot through Uraraka's body when her classmate was cut from her line of sight, but the feeling was brief as the familiar mop of green hair was revealed to be completely dry. The portals had flooded, and a small yell came from the bottom of the stairs, bringing the children's attention back to their homeroom teacher, who was fighting Shigaraki. The water had been thrown at a sideways angle into the villain's unsuspecting body, causing the hand freak to be thrown off guard and caught by Aizawa, who wasted no time in knocking the man-child out. Unfortunately, a giant figure made itself known, and the Eraser hero had no choice but to jump away from the body he had just bound. Shigaraki laid unconscious on the floor, unmoving as the teacher circled around cautiously. The new creature was not attacking, and seemed to only mindlessly stand around until he got too close. It's like a robot with flesh. Its only orders must be to guard the leader. I'm lucky to have knocked him out when I could. The students cheered at the sight as Kurogiri could only lie helplessly on the floor. He wasn't sure where his calculations had been messed up so much, but he had clearly underestimated the strength of the students. There was only one option for the mistman now, as he gave up on resisting, and let a small mutter escape his lips. No one should have heard his secret call for help to his master, but unfortunately for him, there was a student well accustomed to the sound of silence. Viridian eyes widened with an unfamiliar emotion. As a shiver ran up his spine, there was no doubt about it. He knew that name. After all, it was the name of the man from the rumors, the one who could potentially take his quirk away, and the sheer irony of feeling lucky for the very first time in his life was almost enough to make the quiet student laugh. The choice was his now. He had a connection to the person he wanted, and it had fallen right into his lap.
I am here!
All Might suddenly burst through the door, loosening his necktie as he glared at the Nomu. His presence reminded Izuku that his choice had bigger consequences than it seemed, and that the boy's decision could potentially change it all. Was he really going to let go of a villain, and ruin his chances of becoming a hero? There was no way that Izuku could let that happen. But was he also going to let the only lead he found in 15 years just go? He couldn't do that either. Either way, Izuku had to ask himself a question. Was he prepared to give it all up? His spiraling train of thought came to a halt as a gentle hand patted his shoulder. All Might had started his fight against the Nomu since he wanted to get Shigaraki's unconscious body, and Izuku knew it was only a matter of time with Aizawa supporting the number one hero's shadow.
See that, Izuku?
Bakugo was watching the fight with stars in his eyes. The exact same look Izuku used to share with him when they opened cards as children.
That's gonna be us one day.
It was a sight that could almost be described as majestic. The number one hero was slowly but surely overpowering the beast, as the underground hero pulled Asui and Mineta out of the water. Eraser not only provided backup and acted as a defense, but also occasionally helped by erasing the Nomu's quirk when his eyes had the chance to rest. It was a fight where two opposites worked in sync, and the result was breathtaking. It was almost as if a beautiful white light surrounded the scene, and the gentle glow caused everyone's heart to flutter with hope. Adrenaline and excitement pumped through the veins of everyone present, and all were cheering for their teachers. Izuku's empty world was pulling his mind slowly under as he turned to his best friend. The blonde had always radiated a similar white light, becoming a person who had always been there for him. Midoriya couldn't be more grateful, yet at the same time, couldn't help but feel nauseous at their differences. It was times like this that caused Izuku to wish his quirk could just disappear. He wanted to get out of this isolated world and join Bakugo in the light. He wanted to be part of the world that others lived in. He wanted it so badly that his world started to spin. His legs started to lose grip as his body slumped down, crashing into the villain who didn't know how to react. The boy who had held him down had suddenly let go. Kurogiri was obviously not going to let the chance slip, but something had caused him to pause. That something was our new channel, Celestial. Dedicated to all things Dungeons & Dragons, we currently have a series breaking down the different spells in D&D, and soon we'll be starting a new series as well. So if you're a fan of D&D, or have an interest in learning about it, check it out. Additionally, if there's something you've always wanted to see get made into a video, head over there and leave a comment mentioning it. Now let's get back to the story. The sudden thump caught Bakugo's attention, and the human grenade turned around to see Kurogiri gently placing Izuku on the floor. The villain then disappeared before his eyes, just as the USJ doors opened again. Even if the day was saved, the sudden shock of Izuku fainting caused Bakugo to panic, and by the time Izuku woke up, Katsuki had called his parents, and Izuku was taken away to Recovery Girl. The older teen had never seen his friend physically injured after all, and it was becoming too much of a shock for him to handle. In the end, Recovery Girl was able to confirm that Izuku was just out cold from stress and walked away to dry herself off. The leaking pipes had burst again, causing everyone nearby Izuku to be chilled to the bone, and the blonde sighed when everything finally calmed down. It was only when Misuki walked in with a towel that Bakugo noticed something. He wasn't wet. In fact, the blonde was out of the splash zone just like the Bringer of Silence. On one hand, it could have just been a coincidence, but Bakugo knew that coincidences were just something everyone else experienced. Everything in life is a coincidence. From the fact that everyone is conscious at the very moment, to the friendships that everyone makes, to the experiences anyone receives, to the very air particles that everyone breathes in. Becoming friends with Izuku had opened the mind of a once bratty child, and it had humbled his personality, albeit only to the greenette still. He was well aware that his friend's quirk was changing a single one of these coincidences to snowball down the chain. So ironically for Izuku, nothing was a pure coincidence. When his Viridian eyes finally opened up, Bakugo tossed his friend a bottle of water to help him wake up, and Izuku only remained silent. He followed Bakugo without a word and sat in the car, emotionless as ever until he returned to his bedroom. It was only then that the student decided to slowly unbox his feelings, one by one. From the discovery of his latest lead, the 15-year-old experienced excitement for the first time in over a decade. This, coupled with taking his first steps as a hero, was enough for the boy to experience Cloud 9. The mild rush running through his body reminded Izuku of the momentary happiness before the boy came to terms with his next emotion. Like a heavy stone causing ripples in a still lake, something stirred within the student as he tried to understand what he was feeling. It was something that reminisced sadness, but at the same time, it left a sense of loneliness. It was a gutting feeling that seemed to both occupy his mind like an infested swamp and empty it like a dismal, gaping cave. It was sickening to his core, and only then did Izuku remember what emotions were. It was a disappointing resentment of himself. It wouldn't have been so bad previously, since the Bringer of Silence had not experienced happiness enough to know how bad his fall was. However, since he had, it only served to backfire on the student. It was almost ironic, as the pain was worse than when he had made no progress. It was almost as if his life was destined for misery, and wanted to stay that way. When he finally managed to label the turmoil that coiled within himself, a knock on the door cut through his thoughts.
Izuku, we need to talk.
It was odd enough that Bakugo was at his door, since Midori was usually left alone until it was time to go in the morning. But even more since the blonde was well aware that he was currently figuring things out. Acknowledging that it had to be important, the Bringer of Silence rose up from his seat and soundlessly opened the door.
It's about your quirk.
Before he explained any further, Bakugo took a step forward, causing his friend to cautiously step back. Unfortunately, as he did, he accidentally pushed against his desk, which was enough to knock the lamp off the side. As it fell, the cable caught an umbrella, which opened and sprang toward the human grenade. In response, the firecracker lunged forward instead of his usual retreat, startling Izuku, but all of a sudden, the blonde stepped into the silent world. All was still. The deafening absence of sound seemed to consume all that it had touched. A silence so loud that it sent an eerie shiver up the older teen's back. But he took his fear and swallowed it. This was the world his friend had lived in, and the boy's pride helped him stand tall. Izuku was still puzzled at how to react to the situation, but there was something they both had realized. Nothing was happening. What? A wicked smile pulled itself across Bakugo's face as he confirmed his suspicions, but as he took a step back, the window opened, and a gust of wind sent the umbrella to hit the blonde right into the side. A small eruption caused Misuki to yell from the bottom floor, and the explosive teen yelled back before sighing. By the time he saw Izuku again, Midori had already grabbed the nearest notebook, and word after word was scribbled out to try and unfold the new information before them. They both knew that coming close had always been a bad idea, but neither had come to the possibility of too close. It made sense, though, since too close of contact would risk the chance of Izuku getting caught in the crossfire. At the same time, it seemed that the risk would happen afterwards. It was almost like a delay. They weren't sure if that meant there was a chance to control the risk, but Bakugo was quite confident with his friend's keen awareness of his surroundings when he wasn't trying to dissociate from it. It helped cheer Izuku up, since the blonde was showing him that there was good that came out of the situation, and although he was concerned for the small bruise Bakugo received, the explosive teen just waved it off. Instead, they started to talk about the sports festival that happened every year, and wondered if it would get cancelled from today's events. They hoped not, since Bakugo had always looked forward to it. Izuku didn't particularly care since he wanted to be an underground hero, but he always wanted the chance to just analyze everyone. By the time the two boys went to bed, Izuku stared into the ceiling and let his consciousness waver slowly. It must have been the first time in years since the two had a proper conversation like they did that evening, and it gave the student courage to keep looking for a way to get rid of his quirk. He told himself that he had already waited 15 years, and that he could wait a little bit longer. Sleep slowly took his mind, and when morning came, he felt okay. Aizawa announced the news about the sports festival, and Bakugo maliciously grinned with delight. The rest of the class chattered excitedly too, and when the bell rang, They were ready to talk about the upcoming events. Izuku slowly raised his head as he felt a tap on his shoulder. The boy was expecting to face Bakugo, but to his surprise, the student came face to face with none other than Uraraka. She no longer wore her sling, as Recovery Girl had given her the clear, but something else seemed to irritate her. She glanced at the boy before her and took a deep breath just as the crimson-eyed blonde turned their way.
Oi, Round Cheeks, what do you think you're doing?
I'm sorry. Head down with her arms pressed against her sides, the brunette bowed deeply before her class made an apology. The rest of the class was occupied with the other students filling their corridor to notice a display of regret apart from a few, and Izuku wasn't sure what to do. He had only received 3 apologies in his life, and the first one was when he found out about his quirk. The second and third didn't help his case either, as they were both from the incident. Uraraka's sudden shout for forgiveness was completely foreign to him. How should he respond? He wasn't sure. As more questions started to spiral in his mind, the younger girl hurriedly waved her arms frantically in the air. I didn't mean to make you think about it more. I just wanted to say sorry for what I said yesterday. Izuku calmed his thoughts in relief at her word, and his classmate once again bowed. It's my fault, I'm sorry. I don't know what you're going through, but I compared myself thoughtlessly. I know it's a bit late, but I'm Ochako Uraraka. I would like to be friends. With her head still down, Izuku was greeted with once again a new problem he wasn't sure how to deal with. Friends? Could he really? Especially with how well the night before had ended. It was almost too good to be true. So good that the boy started to doubt the pleasantries before him. Maybe it was fake. There was no way such kindness was real. He glanced toward the only friend he had ever had who had left to pick a fight with a purple-haired student. There were still insecurities about their questionable friendship, as they never established how they came together. It was more forced upon them, and they adjusted accordingly. This inability to trust people was becoming a hurdle too high for Izuku, and it didn't help with the recent crash of emotions. Luckily for him, the brunette caught on and just smiled. It's okay if we don't become friends immediately. I just wanted to introduce myself. She walked away quickly to leave Izuku to catch up with his thoughts. The blonde sauntered back as his friend opened a new notebook and started to scribble his thoughts onto paper. Glancing at what was written, the human grenade sighed.
Hey, Izuku.
The writing slowed down, and Viridian eyes met crimson.
Pink Cheeks was taking a step towards you. We didn't have the best of starts, but look at us now. Do what feels right. If she leaves, then it's her loss.
His words helped slow the pace of Izuku's racing mind, and Midoriya silently looked down at his notes. He didn't have any expectations for this potential new friendship, nor did he want any. He was glad that Uraraka seemed to feel the same way. That was when he realized it was the same with Ida. Ida had also taken a step back to give him space, and a small emotion welled up from inside. It felt like a cool breeze on a warm day, and after some thinking, Izuku identified it as feeling grateful. Lunch was like any other day, with Izuku walking through a corridor that filled with silence as he walked past, but turning around after Bakugo grabbed them both food, the bringer of silence paused as he passed near a table. Both Uraraka and Ida sat there with a couple of other students, and the 3 people kept momentary eye contact. No words were exchanged, but somehow the air didn't seem tense. The student left without a word, parting the people of the busy corridor like a silent knife in the wind, and disappearing from sight.
Did you manage to speak with him, Kerr?
Suyuasui asked her brunette friend with a face of blunt curiosity. But the question was turned down with a shake of her bob. No, but... Uraraka glanced at Ida, who supportingly waved an arm. He just does everything his way. They lightheartedly laughed at the statement, but if they knew what the sports festival had in store, the students would have known that they had heavily underestimated the silent boy. At the starting horn fired off for the obstacle race, Izuku accidentally found himself sitting on a sheet of metal, sliding down the ice path, only meters behind Shoto Todoroki. Are you kidding me? Class 1A followed suit relatively quickly in the face of the first hurdle. Less surprised than present Mike, but still confused nevertheless. It was still unexplainable, the way Izuku did anything. But his skill was real as the team lightly hopped over an incoming robot arm with ease. Another strip of metal had skidded to his side, and Izuku found himself using the sheets as makeshift skis, gliding down the ice path before him. Crossing the ropes with a cool facade, it's Shoto Todoroki! Bakugo Katsuki is close behind, blasting his way over the fall. These two are neck and neck, but is that a dark horse I see? Although the distance between them has grown quite a bit, third place goes to none other than Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A! There was a fierce fight between Todoroki and Bakugo as the blonde wanted to take first. The two ended up clashing Quirk so ferociously that they hadn't noticed the silent one slipping past. Whether it was because Midoriya, who had slowly caught up, just didn't care and had no drive to win, or something more, Izuku easily stepped around the mines toward the tunnel. Bakugo saw his friend at the last second and made a quick escape from Todoroki. And the winner is... Green curls met sunlight and cheers erupted as the 3 boys stumbled onto the next stage. Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A! Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed that. Before you leave, we'd like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check in with all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today, so goodbye and have a divine day.